We could begin with something that just happened, important decision from the Supreme Court. And the interesting thing about this decision, it's 9-0. So doesn't happen too often.
Wow, 9
By
to
itself, it's
0.
interesting. Now, of course, you get 9-0 decisions, but sometimes they're about such trivialities that they don't tell you anything about the court. This is not a triviality. For about 40 years, we've had anti-discrimination law, where by and large, if you are a minority and you sue, you have a very low standard of proof. In fact, if there is an imbalance of workers in a certain part of the workforce, they assume that you're being discriminated against. And the company has to explain why they're not discriminating.
The quota.
Yeah, a kind of a built-in quota system, right? However, if you're a white person and you sue, none of this applies.
Because you're not a minority.
Because you're not a minority. So you're presumed to be a member of the discriminator class. And therefore, it's not
the
you can...
oppressor.
That's right. It's not that you can never win, but it's really hard to win.
Mm-hmm.
So what the Supreme Court did is they took this phrase that we've been hearing now for many years, reverse discrimination, and they basically go, there's no such thing. There's only discrimination. Whether you're white, whether you're not white, whether you're straight, whether you're gay, because apparently you had this woman who was passed over for jobs and promotions because she wasn't gay. They wanted to give it to a gay person, right? So what the court said is, enough of all this, you're a member of the oppressor group or the victim group. Yes, discrimination is restricted under the Civil Rights Act, but if you're white, you have exactly the same level of protection as if you are non-white. If you're straight, you have the same protection as if you're gay. So, in other words, there's no kind of double standard.
Nobody gets an advantage.
Nobody gets
basically.
an advantage. So, very good thing. And
Very.
I think it's pretty striking that not only Elena Kagan and Sotomayor, but Ketanji Jackson
Yeah.
also
That's a surprise.
we're making some progress. You know, and I think it cuts a little bit against this idea that the court is so divided. I mean, the country is divided, but the court in some ways perhaps less divided than the country.
Yeah, I think they are actually less divided than the country. I don't think they are as, I don't think they're as polarizing towards each other as the country.
Well, for one, we know that they do get along.
They do.
And the precedent was set years back when Scalia and Ruth Bader Ginsburg...
They were like best friends.
They would go to the opera. And
no, I mean, they actually said they were best friends.
Yeah.
They claimed to be best friends, which I thought was pretty amazing.
Pretty amazing and pretty interesting. On another note, the Trump administration, the Department of Education, has apparently notified the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. This is the accrediting agency. So colleges, in order to operate, need accreditation. Otherwise, they're unaccredited, and your degree has less value. The left set up this whole system, and the reason they set it up is it's a way for them to control what happens in these colleges. And they've been using the accreditor system against, here's Bob Jones University, and they practice racial discrimination, so let's pull their accreditation. They've been using it as a lever of strong-arming private institutions. So what the Trump administration is doing is they're using the same weapon in the same way, but this time against the Ivy League. Now, we're all familiar with Harvard, but this is Columbia. Basically, what's happened is, I'm now going to quote, the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights has determined that Columbia has acted with deliberate indifference toward the harassment of Jewish students, violating Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This is sort of like hate crimes, right? And the Trump administration is saying, we're going to now notify the Middle States Accreditation Agency, which will give Columbia a chance to either be in conformity with the law or have its accreditation pulled. So, I mean, I have to confess, I'm not only surprised, but kind of impressed at the bare-knuckled approach that Trump is using against these Ivy League schools.
Yeah.
I mean, they have openly mobilized against him. They're like, let's put a brain trust together to, help make the legal case against him. Let's try to put this guy in jail. I think J.D. Vance noted that only in the Ivy League, you have voting habits on the part of the faculty and the administration that are like, they show the kind of numbers you get out of North Korea, where like 97% of people, are all on one side and virtually no one is on the other side. So these places have become, and you were saying, I think when we were talking about this earlier, that it's hard to deny that they are hotbeds of terrorist
100%,
sentiment.
100%. Not only are they, this is really, I think, where these terrorists kind of congregate and where they get their juice. They kind of get their power from these rallies. And I would be willing to bet the majority of jihadists that we have in this country are at those rallies.
Oh, interesting. I read something pretty fascinating. This was a post that came out of the Middle East, of all places. And it said that in Gaza and even on the West Bank, you have a lot of people who they don't like Hamas. And the reason they don't like Hamas is because it's not even that they are not on board with Hamas regarding Israel. Here's what happens. The aid trucks show up and Hamas swoops in and grabs all the aid, puts it into their own private storehouses, and then hands it out on its own. So Hamas is intercepting the aid, right?
So they're not members of that club.
They're not members of the inside club, apparently, right? They're right. Now, but this post goes on to say, so that is the experience of people who actually deal with Hamas. However, the post goes on to say, you've got all these, Arabs and Palestinians, and they are in Michigan or they are at Columbia. Their experience is wholly different. They don't deal with Hamas. They're not standing in line for aid. They go eat at the dining hall. You know what I mean? These are coddled, often quite wealthy leftists.
Yeah.
And so they become like Hamas, we're on Hamas's side.
Yeah.
Because they've got the Greta Thunberg view.
Well, they buy the propaganda because
they create the propaganda.
Well, Hamas,
some of them.
Hamas, they're geniuses at propaganda. I mean, I've watched all of these propaganda videos that they have. Not only do they make propaganda videos using the hostages, the Israeli hostages, they make those, but they also make videos that if they release a hostage, they make a whole video and they edit it and they do music and it's like a movie of them coming out of captivity. And it's used for propaganda and propaganda only to say, look how we're treating these people. We're not the evil monsters that you guys say we are. We are really nice. Look what we're doing. We even have a puppy here, and we're giving it to the little girl that was kidnapped at gunpoint. Oh yeah, with her little puppy. And look, she's coming out with her puppy. We didn't kill her puppy, although they do like to kill puppies. Just FYI.
You showed me. I think you